Yeah, boy. Let's get this show on the road. This is my third take on this, so I'm going to make sure that I get this perfect and done in one. And let's get rolling. All right, so pH, let's go. Let's get right into it. I got so much energy because I don't have much energy to spare. All right, so what is pH? Assuming you've taken high school chemistry, you should remember. pH stands for the power of hydrogen, or more specifically, the concentration of hydrogen in a given solution. So if you remember, acid, battery acid, that's the number one. It's highly acidic, highly corrosive. All the way down to 7, we have water, very neutral. It's water. Then we have very alkalinity, or very basic. That's number 14. Had very low hydrogen ions. So, you're good? You're following me? All right, let's keep diving in. So, what can pH do for you? So, pH is really just a tool, a measurement for us to fine-tune our beer as we go along through the brewing process. We're going to be able to find mistakes early on in the brew process that we can correct before we get to the final result. And I'll talk more about fine-tuning as we go along in the video. Who is pH for? If you're a new brewer, then don't really worry about pH. You can figure out pH later on as you go on. If you're intermediate, then yeah, start looking into learning how to do pH. You're going to be able to improve your brewing and make better quality beer and have it to be more consistent. Alright, so when to test pH? Really, you can test pH anytime, all the way from the beginning to testing the waters, all the way to the end to testing the beer. Here's a few areas in the brew process of when to test the pH, and here's a given range of pH that, according to the expert, is acceptable. So, the match, a pH of 5.2 to 5.6. So we're getting almost on the, we're in the acidic area, but we're not too far off from being neutral. Alright, during the wort/boil, we want our pH to be a 5.0 to a 5.4. So now we're starting to get more acidic. During fermentation, we want anything between a 4.5 and a 5.1. And then lastly, for our beer, our final product, we want a 4.0 to a 4.7. And we'll get into more of that number later on, which is right now. Okay, so say you're brewing a light beer. If you're brewing a light beer, your final pH should be anywhere between a 4.0 to a 4.4. Vice versa, if you're brewing a dark beer, your pH should be a 4.3 to a 4.7. Now, why? I'll tell you. For a light beer, a pH of 4.0 to a 4.4 is going to give you the best result in your beer. Your beer is going to taste crisp. Your beer is going to be bright. The hopped characteristics are going to be more refined, more highlighted. It's just going to make all the qualities of the hop and the malt just better. It's just going to give it that little extra boost. Now, for a dark beer, you want a higher pH, a 4.3 to a 4.7. The reason being is all that acidicness, all that acidity in the grain, the dark roasted malt, that's going to kind of be rounded out by that more basic, more alkaline pH. I hope that makes sense. What the higher pH in a dark beer is going to do is it's going to soften the acidity from the malt, and it's going to make the beer more complex. It's going to open up more of the malt characteristic rather than being one-dimensional and just being toasty or caramel or things along that nature. So here's where fine-tuning really gets important. So say you have a light beer that's too high in the pH, a 4.7, and say you have a dark beer that's too low in the pH, a 4.0. Is it going to ruin your beer? No, it's not going to ruin your beer. It's just not going to be that. it's just not going to be that like beer that makes you go, wow, this is a really good beer. It's going to be an okay beer. It's just not going to. Testing pH is a tool that's going to give you that little 1% refinement that's going to make your beer go from good to excellent. That's what pH really is for. Alright, lastly, so say in your beer, you're just almost there to the right of pH that you're looking for. Whether that be 1% higher or lower, doesn't matter. What you can use is carbonic acid or sodium bicarbonate to adjust the pH scale. Now, what the acid is going to do is going to make it more acidic. What the sodium bicarbonate is going to do, it's going to make it more basic. So depending on where you want that pH to be, you can adjust it by using those chemicals or using those products to get that pH to where you want it to go. Now, do that in the beginning of the process when you're testing your pH. Don't just wait until the very end and just dump a whole bunch of this stuff in your beer and expect your beer to still taste great. It's not going to. What's going to happen is all that chemical is just going to be very present and noticeable when you do that. So if you want your pH to be a 4.0, but it's a 4.7 and it's at the final stage of the beer, adjust it to like a 4.5 and just call it quit after that. You don't want to go too hard on this stuff. Anyway, we got through it. I'm done. Now I get to go edit, and that'll probably take 3 o'clock. So I really appreciate you joining in, and I hope this made sense. And I'm rambling. Have a good night.